The Apostle John was boiled in oil and survived. How was that possible? The Roman Empire, with its vastness and power, was known for its religious tolerance, as long as it did not threaten the authority of the emperor. But this tolerance had clear limits, and the Christian faith was increasingly pushing those boundaries. By the end of the 1st century, Christians, led by the apostles, were spreading throughout the empire, preaching a singular God and a message of salvation that directly contrasted with Roman polytheism and the deification of the emperor. 2. Rome. This was a threat not just to its belief system but also to its political structure. Domitian, the emperor at the time, feared that the Christian movement could destabilize his reign. So he decided that the only way to silence the Christians was through relentless persecution. John, one of Jesus' closest apostles, became a target. His preaching and spiritual leadership represented a direct challenge to Roman authority. But what exactly led Domitian to order John's arrest and sentence him to such a cruel and public death? The answer begins to emerge when we examine the punishment imposed on the apostle, to be boiled in oil. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because in upcoming videos, we'll explore even more mysteries that you won't want to miss. John's death sentence was not an isolated event, but part of a broader campaign to eradicate the Christian threat within the empire. However, unlike other Christian leaders who were crucified or stoned, John was sentenced to a particularly cruel fate: to be boiled in hot oil. What made this punishment so brutal and symbolic? First, it was a way to publicly humiliate the victim, showing that the empire had absolute power over anyone who challenged its order. It was also an attempt to eliminate not just the body, but the memory of John, so that anyone thinking of following his teachings would be terrified by the thought of what would happen to them. But what led Domitian to choose this type of death, when he could have simply had John executed in a quicker and more efficient manner? The truth is that Domitian didn't just want to kill John, he wanted to destroy the idea that John represented. And ironically, what seemed like the end for John would become the beginning of a profound mystery. How could someone survive such a relentless punishment? This question begins to gain momentum, setting the stage for the next great twist in John's story. The punishment of being boiled in hot oil was not only a physical torture, but also a psychological one. Imagine the scene: the oil bubbling, the unbearable temperature, the extreme pain. For the Romans, this was a way of showing their superiority and ensuring that the message of resistance was never forgotten. This type of execution was reserved for those who openly defied the empire and its traditions. Additionally, the boiling oil had an effect that seemed to destroy the victim's soul before even destroying their body. It was a punishment meant to leave an indelible mark on both the witnesses and those being executed. In John's case, however, what happened defied all logic and expectation. After being immersed in the oil, his flesh should have been immediately burned, and he should have been reduced to ashes. But instead, he survived. Witnesses claimed that John emerged unscathed, which caused a wave of bewilderment among the Romans. The question now is, was this miracle a sign of something greater? Was John truly protected by God? Or is it possible that there is a natural explanation for his survival? The story doesn't end here, and an even more intriguing twist is yet to come. John didn't just survive the boiling oil. He did it in a way that defied all possible explanations. When he was taken out of the cauldron, many believed he had merely been a spectator of death. But to everyone's surprise, John was alive and, according to reports, without any signs of burns. How is this possible? Various explanations have arisen over the centuries. For many Christians, the only logical answer was that his survival was a miracle, a clear sign that God was protecting John in a supernatural way. The Apostle John, who had been a direct witness to the miracles performed by Jesus, now became a living testimony to divine power. But beyond the spiritual aspect, some scholars suggest there could be a more practical explanation. Could it be that the way John was immersed in the oil, or even the exact temperature of the liquid, prevented him from suffering fatal burns? However, none of these explanations fully capture the magnitude of the event. John's survival remains a mystery to this day, questioning the line between the divine and the human, and challenging the very nature of faith. And as we try to find answers to this, we ask ourselves, what happened to John after this miracle? The answer to that question will open the next chapter in this astonishing story. John's survival of the boiling oil not only shocked those who witnessed it, but it also sparked a wave of speculation and wonder among contemporaries. Those who saw the event were left speechless. According to some historical accounts, John was taken out of the cauldron without a single sign of a burn, as if nothing had happened. The miracle was witnessed by Roman soldiers, officials, and other prisoners, and according to ancient sources, many of them converted to the Christian faith after the event. This made John's story spread like wildfire, and from prisoner he became a symbol of resistance and unshakable faith. But what exactly did these people witness? How did they describe what they saw? These witnesses gave differing versions of the event. Some spoke of a divine light surrounding John, while others insisted that his appearance showed no sign of damage. This contrast in the accounts only adds to the mystery and fascination surrounding this miracle. Was divine intervention really visible to all? Or were the details that emerged in the different versions merely the result of subjective interpretations? What we do know is that John's survival became a story that spread quickly, leading more and more people to question God's power and the true meaning of his protection. For Christians, the answer to John's miracle was clear: divine intervention. The belief is that God, in his infinite wisdom and power, had chosen John for an even greater mission. His survival was not just a sign of personal strength or physical endurance, but a message that God was actively present in the lives of his servants, protecting them from any harm. The Apostle John, saved from a mortal punishment, became not just a martyr but a living proof of Christ's power and the promise of divine protection. This episode resonated deeply in Christian communities, especially during times of persecution, offering renewed hope that faith could overcome even the greatest obstacles. But this explanation, while powerful, raises deeper questions. Why did God choose to protect John and not other apostles or equally faithful Christians? What made John so special? And the most intriguing question: what does this teach us about how divine intervention might occur in our lives today? John's miracle opens a door to broader discussions about the nature of miracles and the relationship between the divine and the human. However, some scholars and skeptics have begun suggesting that there might be explanations beyond the religious realm. For what happened? Hey, did you know these facts? Leave a comment if you've heard about it before. Let's talk. Although the divine explanation remains the most popular, some scientific and skeptical perspectives suggest that John's survival might be explained by a combination of natural and circumstantial factors. There are theories suggesting that the boiling oil might have been at a slightly lower temperature than expected, which could have allowed John to survive. Others speculate that the type of oil used might have been thicker or had natural properties that for some reason did not cause the expected destruction. Additionally, some propose that John's resistance to heat could have been greater than that of others, due to his physical constitution or even his health before the punishment. This theory is based on the idea that, under certain conditions, the human body can endure extremes that would be fatal to most people. However, none of these scientific explanations seem to fully capture the magnitude of the event. After all, if it were something as simple as the temperature of the oil or an unusual physical resistance, why John? Why was he the only one to survive, while other Christians suffered violent deaths under similar conditions? The search for natural explanations raises even more questions about the mystery of John's survival, making it all the more fascinating. What if the explanation is neither fully divine nor entirely natural? What does that reveal about the limits of human understanding? The question that underpins John's entire story is not just how he survived, but why he survived. Many believe the key to understanding this miracle lies in John's unwavering faith, his devotion to God, and his spiritual connection could have generated supernatural protection, an energy that transcended the physical and the human. For Christians, true faith is not a vague belief but a powerful force that can, at certain moments, invoke miracles. John, as an apostle of Christ, would have reached such a spiritual intensity that his survival could be interpreted as a manifestation of divine power in response to his pure and dedicated faith. But what does this teach us about the power of faith? Does everyone have the ability to experience such protection? Or was there something about John that made him exceptional? The story raises profound questions about the impact of faith in our daily lives. If John could have been protected by the strength of his belief, what does that mean for all of us seeking a higher purpose? Faith, not just as a belief, but as a state of being, a connection to something transcendent, seems to be one of the key elements to understanding this miracle. But is that enough to answer the full mystery of his survival? Perhaps as John's story progresses, more clues will emerge. When the news of John's survival spread, it not only caused a stir among Christians, but it also became a symbol of resilience and spiritual strength. In a period of intense persecution and martyrdom, where many Christians were being killed in brutal ways, John's story offered a new perspective. He wasn't just another martyr, but someone who was preserved from a horrible death, and this began to be interpreted as a sign that the Christian faith could indeed overcome any adversity. For the Christian community spread throughout the empire, John's survival became a living proof that nothing, not even the power of Rome, could destroy what God had started. John became a symbol of spiritual victory over physical death. But at the same time, the miracle raised deeper questions about the relationship between suffering and faith. If God can save one man from death, why does he allow others to go through such painful and fatal trials? This duality between human suffering and divine intervention was a theme that resonated for centuries, and John's miracle became a constant reflection for those facing persecution. However, this symbolism of resilience was only part of the story. What came after his survival was even more extraordinary. John wasn't just a figure of resistance, but a bolder leader with a clearer mission. What he did next after the miracle would make the story of his life even more significant. Let's continue, but before we do, I noticed you haven't liked the video yet. If you're enjoying the content, go ahead and hit the like button. After surviving the boiling oil, something remarkable happened. John did not fade into obscurity, but his voice became even more powerful. Many expected that, after such a traumatic experience, he would retreat from public life. However, the opposite occurred. John not only continued to preach with fervor, but his message gained even more strength. His experience of survival was seen as confirmation that he was under God's direct protection, and his words now carried even greater weight. He was exiled to the island of Patmos, a destination that seemed to isolate and silence him. But instead, Patmos became the setting for his most powerful revelation, the Apocalypse, the Book of Revelation. His survival of the boiling oil was not just an isolated event, but part of a divine path that culminated in one of the most enigmatic and visionary works of Christianity. The question that arises now is, was the miracle merely a prelude to something even deeper and more transformative? Did his survival have a greater purpose that transcended his own life, connecting him to the cosmic events he would witness in his apocalyptic vision? His journey on Patmos, in many ways, reflected a complete cycle, from persecution to revelation, and John's survival was crucial for him to become one of the pillars of the Christian faith. After being submerged in boiling oil and surviving such torture, John was exiled to the remote island of Patmos, a place where the Romans sent those they considered dangerous or subversive. Initially, this exile seemed like an attempt to silence John's voice once and for all. However, for the early Christian church, Patmos ended up becoming the setting for one of the most important revelations in the history of the faith, the Apocalypse. John, who was meant to be silenced by the empire, was in fact led to a new stage in his mission. His survival of the boiling oil was, in a way, what enabled him to continue his spiritual journey with greater depth and clarity, as if God himself had preserved him to deliver to the world a prophetic message that would alter the course of Christian history. The apocalypse, with its stunning visions and messages of hope, judgment, and renewal, became the work that completed John's mission. But here arises a crucial question. Was the miracle of survival a way for God to ensure that John would be alive to witness this cosmic vision? Or was there something deeper at play? In a sense, John's life before and after the miracle reveals a pattern, a resilience not only physical but spiritual, culminating in one of the greatest revelations in human history. John's miracle and his life afterward invite us to reflect on several profound aspects of faith, resistance, and personal mission. John's survival of the boiling oil, on one hand, can be seen as a testimony of divine power. On the other hand, it challenges us to think about the mysteries of life and death. Why did John survive when others, equally faithful, succumbed to similar trials? Could it be that, at its core, his survival was tied not only to his faith but to the divine purpose he represented? John's story is, in many ways, a metaphor for the spiritual journey of all of us. No matter how great the persecution or suffering, true faith can not only survive but flourish, bringing a broader and deeper vision of the world. Moreover, his survival also invites reflection on the miracles in our own lives. Are they mere coincidences or manifestations of something greater? John's story is an invitation to ponder the role of faith in the face of adversity and how, even in the most desperate circumstances, the divine can manifest in unexpected ways. What we can learn from John is that spiritual resilience is not just surviving life's tests, but also finding a greater purpose through them, turning every suffering into an opportunity for growth and revelation. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to continue receiving more incredible content like this.